We're joined now by a member of the House Freedom Caucus, the group considering articles of impeachment against Rosenstein. Matt Gaetz is a Republican congressman from Florida. Good evening to you, Congressman.
Good evening.
Okay, so you've probably heard a little bit from the Deputy Attorney General responding to this. I want to play a little bit more of what he had to say today when this topic came up.
Yeah, there have been people who have been making threats privately and publicly against me for quite some time, and I think they should understand by now the Department of Justice is not going to be extorted. We're going to do what's required by the rule of law.
What do you make of that? He says you're not going to be, or people who are making threats about his position are not going to be extorting the DOJ.
Well, earlier you played a clip where Rosenstein said no House Republicans would put their name on these articles of impeachment. I think Mr. Rosenstein ought to be more worried about what he's put his name on. For example, the FISA warrant renewal. After the FBI knew that Christopher Steele was lying and was not trustworthy, Rosenstein himself signed the document to spy on an American citizen with no justification. He also put his name on the pleading to silence the whistleblower in the Uranium One case. Now, I'll say this, Rod Rosenstein's understanding of extortion seems to depart from the law. The definition of extortion is forcing someone to do something that they have no legal obligation to do under some threat. Rod Rosenstein has an obligation to follow the law. That's all we want him to do. And what's most telling about his viewpoint are his most recent comments to the New York Times, where he said he doesn't believe that the Congress has a constitutional authority to conduct oversight. I think that means he's not reading Article 1 correctly, particularly our power to appropriate funds, and then, of course, ensure that those funds are used in accordance with the law. Here, the FBI and Department of Justice departed from the law. They did so because they were out to get Donald Trump, and now they want to evade oversight, and it's something we're not going to let them do.
Well, let's talk about Chairman Goodlatte and Gowdy have reached a deal with the DOJ to get production of documents they've been after for a long, long time. It sounds like there's progress on some of these fronts as far as cooperation with the DOJ. Why is that not enough for you?
Because we're not getting the documents fast enough, Shannon. We've requested 1.3 million documents, and we've received only a few thousand at a time. That's entirely inappropriate. And again, now Rosenstein has shown his cards. He says he doesn't believe that we have a constitutional ability to even conduct oversight. So here's what I think's happening. I think at the Department of Justice and at the FBI, they know they did wrong in these FISA warrants that were based on false information, where they were not disclosing all the material facts to the court. And so they're hoping that if this just takes long enough, and if they survive to the November elections, there's a chance that Democrats will take control, and then there will be no meaningful oversight. There'll just be a continuation of a witch hunt against the president.
Quickly,
so time is not our friend, and that's why we need to act quickly.
Quickly on this idea of the fall elections, which you mentioned, Jennifer Rubin, who is billed as a conservative blogger over the Washington Post, says this: these people, meaning you guys talking about impeachment, are nuts and unfit to hold office. Enough. Vote them out. How does this factor into the fall?
Well, she has one vote just like everybody else. The folks in my district, and I think across the country, are fed up with the mistreatment of our president. We got a president who's out there trying to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, to face down Iran, and he's having to deal with this ludicrous investigation that was never based on fact, where there's been no evidence of collusion, and which, by the way, if there even was a prosecution, Rod Rosenstein would be a witness based on the questions that were released about James Comey's firing. So you can't oversee an investigation when you could potentially be a witness in that investigation. These aren't things that are nuts. We just want the law to be followed.
All right, well, keep us up to date if there's any progress on these articles. We know that we'll be watching, as well as the Deputy Attorney General. Congressman Gaetz, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on the other side.